Ozzy. Everyone wants to appear on Ozzy's album. But it has a lot to do with something. If you give Jimmy Page, just cut him some slack. Jimmy Page not appearing on the new Ozzy Osbourne album. This is Ozzy's follow-up to Ordinary Man, which was released in 2020, like we used to. I think a lot of this is him not wanting to record and send to Philo because he's not meant to record this way, but who could blame him?
What did Jimmy Page reveal that left rock fans stunned? For years, the true story of his strained relationship with Ozzy Osbourne remained hidden. Despite their shared impact on rock history, these two legends clashed in ways that few ever realized. Now, Page's latest confession sheds light on their rivalry and the unexpected events that turned Ozzy's triumph into Page's personal nightmare. Ready to find out what he finally admitted? Before we move on, I will like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video.
Jimmy Page not appearing on the new Ozzy Osbourne album. This is Ozzy's follow-up to Ordinary Man, which was released in 2020.
In the mid to late 1970s, the cracks in Ozzy Osbourne's world weren't just showing, they were splintering wide open. As the frontman for Black Sabbath, Ozzy had built a career that redefined heavy metal, but his behavior off stage told a different story. Amid the band's rising tension, Ozzy's growing reliance on drugs and alcohol became impossible to ignore. Rehearsals were inconsistent, live performances were erratic, and behind the scenes, Black Sabbath was barely keeping it together. By the time Ozzy was fired from the band in 1979, his reputation wasn't just damaged, it seemed unsalvageable. At that same time, Jimmy Page was staring at a very different reality. Led Zeppelin, despite its own reputation for wild excess, remained disciplined when it came to their craft. Their albums were painstakingly composed, their live sets tightly executed, and Page himself, notorious for perfectionism, saw the fruits of that approach as Led Zeppelin dominated the rock world. Watching Ozzy unravel from a distance, Page couldn't help but see a lesson in the chaos. To someone as meticulous as him, Ozzy wasn't just struggling, he was showcasing the dangers of losing control. Ozzy's chaotic moments weren't hard to spot during these years. Stories of missed gigs, bizarre outbursts, and drug-fueled nights were constant headlines. By contrast, Led Zeppelin had become known for their ability to maintain their mystique. Page, though certainly acquainted with excess, imposed an order within Zeppelin's work that kept the band sailing above the kind of chaos that defined Ozzy's life. While Black Sabbath's momentum faltered, Zeppelin's onward march illustrated how discipline and vision could safeguard a career, no matter the temptations surrounding you. At the time, as Ozzy's firing from Black Sabbath made headlines, it seemed the writing was on the wall. For an artist as deeply creative as Ozzy, being let go from the band he had helped define looked like the end of the road. From afar, Page likely couldn't imagine this trajectory going anywhere but further downhill. What remained of Ozzy's future seemed fragile, a ghost of his former impact, and for Page, that vulnerability underscored the cost of mismanaging artistry and excess.
Which is the way this album was recorded. I never went into music in the first place to do that. It was playing together.
But this, as it turned out, was only part of the story. Ozzy wasn't content to fade into the background, nor to let his legacy be written by his failures. What came next was a shift so unexpected that it forced everyone, Page included, to rethink what they believed about the man who had fallen so far. Not only would Ozzy's career take a turn that no one had predicted, but it would ultimately challenge the very assumptions Page had made about how legacy and longevity work in the rock world. Let's just say, Ozzy's journey was far from over at this point. In 1980, Ozzy Osbourne's name wasn't exactly one fans associated with fresh success. After being ousted from Black Sabbath just a year earlier, he seemed destined to fade into the heavy metal history books, a frontman who derailed his own career through self-destruction. But then came Blizzard of Oz. This wasn't just a comeback, it was a reinvention. With the help of rising guitar virtuoso Randy Rhoads, Ozzy crafted an album that captured both the raw energy of his Black Sabbath roots and something entirely new. Tracks like Crazy Train not only brought him back into the spotlight, but proved to the world that he didn't need a band like Sabbath to survive. Ozzy Osbourne was a solo star now, and in many ways, this was the beginning of an entirely new chapter in his career. Page, on the other hand, had always embraced a meticulous, sometimes obsessive craftsmanship with Led Zeppelin. By contrast, Ozzy's persona, and to an extent his creative process, thrived on spontaneity, chaos, and risk. When Blizzard of Oz soared, it didn't just defy expectations, it flew in the face of everything Page thought sustained longevity in the industry, where Page relied relied on control and precision, Ozzy had bottled his unpredictability and turned it into gold.
It's Ozzy. Everyone wants to appear on Ozzy's album. But it has a lot to do with something. If you give Jimmy Page, just cut him some slack.
The impact on Page went beyond professional disappointment. In some ways, Ozzy's resurgence symbolized the broader shift happening in rock music. The 1980s were ushering in a new generation of artists, and the heavy metal scene Ozzy helped pave was exploding. For Page, the dissolution of Zeppelin meant stepping aside as new voices, like Ozzy's, redefined what rock could mean. And while Ozzy was by no means a fresh face, his reemergence signaled an evolution, one that Page, still grappling with personal and professional losses, couldn't fully partake in at the time. But this was far from the end of their story. While Ozzy's star soared, Page's relationship with him and his view of the man who'd once been a cautionary tale.
His refusal to join Osbourne, he says, "I will never be one of those people who will record alone and send someone a file,"
would continue to shift in surprising ways. Whatever tension existed between them, it was only the beginning. Jimmy Page has always held fast to a clear philosophy about music. It isn't just about the notes, it's about the connection. So, when Ozzy Osbourne's team approached him to collaborate on Ozzy's latest album, many assumed it might mark an exciting union of two rock icons. Instead, Page revealed he had declined. And the reason wasn't just logistical. "I will never be one of those people who'll record alone and send someone a file," Page shared in a rare statement. "I never went into music in the first place to do that. It was for playing together." It wasn't just a polite refusal, it was a reflection of the very different paths these two legends have taken. For Ozzy, the project represented his continuous commitment to evolving in an industry that thrives on change. His most recent recordings leaned heavily on a modern trend, remote collaborations, with musicians contributing parts independently from studios scattered across the world. The album's production embraced a technological and fragmented way of making music. Some praised this approach for its flexibility, while others, like Page, saw a loss of something irreplaceable. From his perspective, that energy, the spark that happens when artists share the same room, simply couldn't be recreated over a file transfer.
Like we used to. I think a lot of this is him not wanting to record and send a file out because he's not meant to record this way, but who could blame him?
This philosophy isn't new for Page. Throughout his career, he's stayed loyal to the belief that music is fundamentally communal. In Led Zeppelin, every member's input shaped the band's legendary sound. Songs weren't just written, they were born out of jam sessions, arguments, and the raw electricity of being together in the same space. For Page, these moments weren't just essential, they were the soul of the music. In stark contrast, Ozzy's career, particularly in his solo years, has often relied on assembling a rotating cast of musicians. While this approach brought him groundbreaking collaborators like Randy Rhoads, it also meant that processes like remote recordings became more practical over time, even if they lacked the intimate connection of Page's method. This tension, the clash between their philosophies, sheds light on their complicated dynamic. Their differing approaches to crafting music have always set them apart, but they've also defined how they've each weathered the pressures of fame. Page's refusal to collaborate wasn't just a practical choice, it revealed how he's remained tethered to his old world ideals, even as the industry around him evolved. For Ozzy, those changes have often been necessary for his resilience, shifting, bending, and reinventing himself to stay in the game. Page's revelation isn't just about declining one project, it's a broader reflection on the shifting balance between art and legacy. His refusal to compromise his process, even at the expense of working alongside a fellow legend, speaks to his unwavering commitment to a purist vision. But it also highlights what defines Ozzy, his ability to thrive in chaos, to turn uncertainty into success. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong, but one thing is clear, the creative friction between the two reflects their unmistakable marks on rock history. Even in their differences, both have helped shape the way music is made, performed, and remembered. Jimmy Page and Ozzy Osbourne couldn't be more different in how they built their legacies. Page, the perfectionist, gave the world masterpieces born from discipline and precision. Ozzy, on the other hand, embraced chaos, creating his unique brand of heavy metal that thrived on unpredictability. Yet both men shaped rock music in ways that continue to resonate. Their uneasy mix of competition and admiration underscores how personal philosophies ripple through an artist's career. But whose approach left the bigger mark? That's up to you. Let us know in the comments. Do you connect more with Page's meticulousness or Ozzy's wild resilience?